Waitress helped a broke father and child, unaware he was a secret. Millionaire watching her kindness *, the rain hammered against the windows of the blue moon. Diner like angry fists demanding entry. Lena Rodriguez wiped down the counter for the third time that evening, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wisps escaping around her tired face. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across the empty booths that lined the small restaurant. At 26, Lena had been working at the diner for 4 years, ever since her father's construction accident left her. Family drowning in medical bills. Her mother cleaned offices at night, while Alina served coffee and comfort food to truckers, late shift workers, and anyone else seeking refuge from Portland's relentless autumn storms. The bell above the door chimed, and Alina looked up to see a man and a young girl step inside, both soaked to the bone. The man wore a faded jacket that had seen better days, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. Water dripped from his clothes onto the checkered linoleum floor. Beside him stood a little girl, maybe 8 years old, with long black hair and wide brown eyes that seemed too old for her face. Alina grabbed 2 clean towels from behind the counter and hurried over. "Oh my goodness, you two are drenched. Here, let me help you dry off." The man accepted the towels gratefully, his fingers brushing against Elena's as he took them. "Thank you. I'm Marcus, and this is my daughter Sophie." Sophie smiled shyly, clutching a small backpack to her chest. "Thank you, miss," Daddy said. "We had to walk because the car wouldn't start." Elena's heart clenched. She guided them to a booth near the heater, noticing how Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he helped Sophie out of her wet coat. "Let me get you some hot coffee and cocoa. On the house while you warm up." Marcus started to protest, but Alina was already walking away. She prepared the drinks, adding extra marshmallows to Sophie's cocoa and including a plate of fresh cookies she'd been saving for herself. When she returned, Sophie was drawing in a small notebook with colored pencils. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Alina asked, setting down the drinks. Sophie looked up, her eyes brightening. "It's a picture of the rain. Daddy says rain makes flowers grow, so it's not really sad, just helping." Marcus smiled at his daughter, and Alina noticed the way his whole face transformed with genuine love. Sophie's quite the artist. She sees beauty in everything. Alina sat down across from them, something about their quiet connection drawing her in. "I used to draw when I was your age. Do you like to paint too?" Sophie nodded eagerly. "I love to paint, but we don't have paints right now. Daddy says maybe soon." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Alina caught the flash of pain in his eyes. She excused herself and returned to the counter, processing what she'd observed. The man's clothes were worn but clean. His shoes had holes that he'd tried to cover with tape, and when he'd pulled out his wallet to pay, she'd seen it was nearly empty. Alina had grown up with financial struggles. She recognized the signs. The way Marcus counted his money twice, the careful way he'd looked at the menu prices, the protective way he watched his daughter. These weren't people taking advantage of her kindness. They were drowning, just like her family had been. She made a decision that would change all their lives. When Marcus approached the counter to pay, Alina had already prepared a bag with sandwiches, fruit, and more cookies. "Your total is $5, she said, though their order had been closer to 15. Marcus frowned, clearly knowing the math was wrong. "I think there's been a mistake." Alina smiled warmly. "No mistake. Rainy day special. It's this." She handed him the bag. "Is for tomorrow's breakfast. Sophie mentioned she likes peanut butter and jelly." Marcus stared at the bag, then at Alina, his eyes beginning to glisten. "You don't have to do this. We're not charity cases." "Of course you're not," Alina said gently. "You're customers who got caught in a storm. This is just what neighbors do. For each other." Sophie had joined them at the counter, standing on her tiptoes to see. "Daddy, the nice lady gave us food for tomorrow." Marcus knelt down to Sophie's level, his voice thick with emotion. "What do you say to Miss Alina?" Sophie wrapped her small arms around Elena's waist in an unexpected hug. "Thank you for being kind to us. You have a beautiful heart." Alina felt tears prick her eyes. She hugged Sophie back, breathing in the scent of rain and childhood innocence. "You're very welcome, sweetheart." As they prepared to leave, Marcus turned back one more time. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us." Alina watched them disappear into the storm, Sophie's small hand safely enclosed in her father's. She didn't know that Marcus Chen was the founder of TechVision Industries, worth over $200 million. She didn't know that his expensive car was parked 3 blocks away, or that his driver was waiting patiently in the rain. What she did know was that a father and daughter had needed help. She'd been able to provide it. That night, as she closed the diner and walked to her own small apartment, Lena felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee she'd drunk. Marcus sat in his car later that evening, Sophie asleep in the passenger seat, and thought about the woman who'd shown them such unexpected kindness. For 3 months, he'd been conducting his own social experiment, dressing down and visiting different establishments to see how people treated him without the influence of his wealth and reputation. Most had been indifferent or dismissive. Lena Rodriguez was the first person who'd looked at him and seen not a potential customer or source of tips, but simply a human being in need. He made a mental note to return to the Blue Moon Diner, though. He couldn't quite admit to himself that his interest went beyond mere curiosity about Elena's character. Something about her genuine smile and the way she'd knelt down to Sophie's level had stirred feelings he'd thought buried with his late wife. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Sophie became regular customers at the Blue Moon Diner. They came every Tuesday and Friday evening, always ordering modestly but leaving generous tips that Elena never suspected came from Marcus's personal account. To her, they were simply a father and daughter trying to make ends meet. Just like so many of her customers, Elena found herself looking forward to their visits more than she cared to admit. Marcus was quiet but thoughtful, asking about her day, and actually listening to her answers. Sophie had begun bringing her artwork to show Elena. The diner's bulletin board now featured several of the little girl's drawings. "Miss Elena, look what I made for you," Sophie announced one evening, sliding a folded piece of paper across the table. Elena opened it to find a crayon drawing of the 3 of them standing in front of the diner, all smiling under a rainbow. "It's beautiful, Sophie. You're getting so good at drawing people." Marcus watched the interaction with something tightening in his chest. "She's been talking about you all week. Sophie, tell Miss Elena what you've been practicing." Sophie's face lit up. "I've been drawing hands. Daddy says hands are the hardest part, but I wanted to draw yours because they're always doing nice things for people." Elena felt her cheeks warm. "That's very sweet of you to notice." Marcus studied Elena's face as she talked with Sophie, noting the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, and how she unconsciously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. He'd dated occasionally since his wife's death 2 years ago, but those women had been interested in his money and status. Elena had no idea who he was, yet she treated him with a respect and warmth that felt entirely genuine. "Elena," Marcus said suddenly, then stopped, unsure how to continue. She looked at him expectantly, and he felt like a teenager again, tongue-tied and uncertain. "I was wondering if you might like to join us for a walk in the park sometime." "Sophie loves feeding the ducks, and I thought you might enjoy getting out of the diner for a while." Elena's heart fluttered. She'd been hoping Marcus might ask her to spend time together outside of work, but she'd never expected it. "I'd love that. Sunday is my day off." Sophie clapped her hands together. "Yes, I can show you the big oak tree where the squirrels live." At Sunday, Elena met them at Laurelhurst Park, wearing a simple sundress and carrying a bag of breadcrumbs she'd saved from the diner. Marcus had traded his usual worn jacket for a plain button-down shirt and jeans, and Elena thought he looked handsome in the afternoon sunlight. They spent hours walking the paths, Sophie running ahead to point out interesting rocks and flowers while Marcus and Elena talked quietly behind her. Elena learned that Marcus was between jobs in the tech industry, that he had lost his wife in a car accident, and that he was devoted to giving Sophie as normal a childhood as possible despite their circumstances. "She's lucky to have you," Elena said, watching Sophie chase a butterfly. "You can see how much she loves you." Marcus's expression grew tender. "I try. Some days I wonder if I'm doing enough for her. She deserves so much more than I can give her right now." Elena touched his arm gently. "Love is the most important thing you can give a child. Everything else is just details." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to narrow to just the 2 of them. Marcus felt an overwhelming urge to tell her everything, to explain that he could give Sophie anything she wanted, that he could give Elena anything she needed. but something held him back. He never had someone look at him the way Alina did, with such genuine affection and respect for who he was as a person rather than what he owned. As the afternoon wore on, they found themselves sitting on a bench while Sophie played on the nearby playground. Alina had taken off her shoes and was curled up beside Marcus, close enough that he could smell her shampoo and feel the warmth of her body. "I haven't felt this relaxed in a long time," Alina admitted. "Working at the diner, taking care of my mom. It's a lot sometimes. Being here with you and Sophie feels like a little vacation." Marcus turned to face her fully. "You take care of your mother?" Alina nodded. "She has arthritis and diabetes. The medications are expensive, and she can't work as much as she used to, but we manage." Marcus felt another wave of guilt wash over him. Here was this incredible woman, struggling to support her family, while still finding ways to help others, and he'd been deceiving her for weeks. "Alina, Daddy, Miss Alina, come push me on the swings," Sophie called out, interrupting whatever Marcus had been about to say. They spent the rest of the afternoon playing with Sophie, taking turns pushing her on the swings and helping her across the monkey bars. As the sun began to set, Alina felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Walking back to their cars, Marcus caught Alina's hand in his. "Thank you for today. Sophie and I both needed this." Alina squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses she assumed came from manual labor. "Me too. Would you like to do this again sometime?" Marcus lifted their joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I'd like that very much." That evening, as Alina lay in bed replaying the day's events, she found herself falling for Marcus in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. She'd built walls around her heart after her last relationship ended badly, but Marcus's quiet strength and obvious devotion to his daughter were breaking down her defenses. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his study in his sprawling mansion, staring at a photo of Alina and Sophie that he'd taken with his phone. His business manager had called twice about urgent matters, but Marcus had ignored the calls. For the first time in 2 years, something mattered more to him than work. Alina hummed softly as she prepared for another evening shift at the diner. It had been 3 weeks since their day at the park, and she and Marcus had been spending more time together. He'd helped her fix a leaky faucet in her apartment. She'd taught Sophie how to make paper flowers, and slowly, carefully, they'd been building something that felt like the beginning of love. She'd even started imagining what it might be like to be part of their little family, to help Marcus provide for Sophie and create a stable home together. The thought both excited and worried her. She'd never felt this way about anyone before. And the intensity of her feelings for both Marcus and Sophie sometimes left her breathless. The bell above the diner door chimed, and Alina looked up expecting to see Marcus and Sophie. Instead, a woman in an expensive suit entered, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the light rain outside. She looked around the diner with barely concealed disdain before approaching the counter. "I'm looking for Marcus Chen," the woman said crisply. "I was told he might be here." Alina frowned. "I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name." The woman pulled out her phone and showed Alina a photo. Alina's heart stopped. It was Marcus, but he was wearing a tailored suit and standing in front of a glass building with Tech Vision Industries emblazoned across the entrance. "That's impossible," Alina whispered, staring at the image. He's not. The woman studied Alina with sharp eyes. "You're the waitress, aren't you? The one he's been playing house with." Alina's legs suddenly felt weak. "I'm sorry." "Who are you?" "I'm Catherine Walsh, Marcus's business partner. The Marcus you know is Marcus Chen, founder and CEO of Tech Vision Industries. He's worth over $200 million. The words hit Alina like physical blows. She gripped the edge of the counter, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. "That's not possible. Marcus works in tech, but he's between jobs. He and Sophie are struggling financially." Catherine laughed coldly. "Marcus Chen owns 3 homes, a private jet, and more cars than most people see in a lifetime. His daughter attends the most expensive private school in Portland. The only thing he's struggling with is his ridiculous midlife crisis." Alina's mind raced back through all their conversations. All the times Marcus had let her pay for things, all the moments she'd felt sorry for their situation. The worn clothes, the broken-down car story, the modest orders at the diner. Been a lie. Why? Alina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Catherine shrugged. Who knows? Maybe he was bored. Maybe he wanted to see how the other half lives. Rich men have strange hobbies. The door chimed again, and Marcus entered with Sophie. He stopped, short when he saw Catherine, his face going pale. Sophie ran toward Alina as usual, but Alina couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Alina, Marcus said urgently, moving toward her. Can explain. Can you? Alina finally found her voice, though it sounded foreign to her own ears. Can you explain why you've been lying to me for months? Why you let me believe you were struggling when you're worth millions? Sophie looked between the adults, confusion and fear creeping into her young face. Miss Elena? What's wrong? Marcus knelt beside his daughter. Sophie, go sit in our booth for a minute, okay? The grown-ups need to talk. Seen with amusement, I'll be in the car, Marcus. We have a board meeting in an hour. After Catherine left, Marcus turned back to Alina, who had backed away from him until she hit the wall. Alina, please let me explain. It's not what you think. I think Elena's voice rose. I think you're a liar. I think you've been playing some sick game with me for months. That's not true, Marcus said desperately. Yes. I lied about my circumstances, but everything else was real. My feelings for you, the way Sophie cares about you, none of that was. Alina laughed bitterly. Your feelings? You mean the way you let me pay for your food? The way you let me worry about whether you and Sophie had enough to eat? The way you watched me count my tips and never once offered to help? I wanted to help, but I didn't know how without revealing who I was. You could have tried honesty, Alina shot back. Remember that concept? It's what people do when they care about each other. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, frustration and guilt warring in his expression. I've been wealthy my whole life, Alina. Everyone who's ever approached me has wanted something. Money, connections, favors. When you showed us kindness that first night, it was the first time in years someone had seen me as just a person. So you decided to keep lying to me? I decided to see what it would be like to be loved for who I am, not what I have. Lena felt, tears burning her eyes. But you didn't give me that choice, did you? You made the decision for both of us. You took away my right to know who I was falling in love with. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither could cross. Marcus stepped toward her, hope flickering in his eyes. You were falling in love with me? Alina wiped her eyes angrily. I was falling in love with a man who doesn't exist. Marcus I loved was honest and humble and understood what it meant to struggle. The real Marcus Chen is just another rich man who thinks he can buy whatever he wants. That's not fair, Marcus said quietly. You know me, Alina. You know my heart. Do I? Alina looked over at Sophie, who was watching them with wide, worried eyes. Did you use your daughter to manipulate me too? Was her affection part of the game? Marcus's face hardened. Leave Sophie out of this. She adores you, and that's completely genuine. But based on a lie, just like everything else. Lena walked to the booth where Sophie sat, her small hands folded in her lap. Sophie, sweetheart, I need to tell you something. I'm not going to be able to see you and your daddy anymore. Sophie's face crumpled. Why? Did I do something wrong? No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and those mistakes make it hard for people to stay. Friends. Alina kissed Sophie's forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair one last time. Then she stood and faced Marcus. I need you to leave. Both of you. Don't come back. Lena, please. Give me a chance to make this right. There. Is no making this right, Marcus? Yeah. You had dozens of chances to tell me the truth, and you chose to lie every single time. I can't trust you. I can't trust anything about what we had. Marcus gathered Sophie in his arms, the little girl crying against his shoulder. As they reached the door, he turned back one last time. I love you, Alina. That was never a lie, Alina. Watched them leave, her heart breaking with every step they took away from her. She sank into the booth they'd occupied so many times. surrounded by the ghosts of conversations and laughter and the dreams she'd built around a man who'd never really existed. 2 weeks passed in a blur of empty shifts and sleepless nights. Alina went through the motions at the diner, serving customers and making small talk, but her heart wasn't in it. She'd thrown herself into caring for her mother and picking up extra shifts, anything to keep from thinking about Marcus and Sophie. Her mother had noticed the change immediately. "Mia, you look like you haven't slept in days. What happened with that man and his daughter you were always talking about?" Alina had broken down then, telling her mother everything. Maria Rodriguez had listened without judgment, holding her daughter as she cried. "Sometimes the heart loves before the mind understands," she'd said. "The question is whether his love for you was real enough to overcome his mistakes." Alina wasn't sure she believed in that kind of love anymore. She was closing the diner alone. On a Thursday night, when she heard a soft knock on the glass door, Alina looked up to see Sophie standing outside, her face pressed against the window. Behind her, Marcus waited by a car Alina had never seen before. A sleek black sedan that probably cost more than she made in 5 years. Against her better judgment, Alina unlocked the door. Sophie immediately threw herself into Elena's arms, sobbing, "I miss you so much, Miss Elena. Daddy says you're mad at us." Elena held the little girl close, her own tears starting again. "I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I could never be mad at you. Then why can't you come home with us? Daddy cries at night when he thinks I'm asleep. He misses you too." Alina looked over Sophie's head at Marcus, who stood in the doorway looking haggard and older than his years. "Sophie, honey, can you go color at our booth for a few minutes? I need to talk to your daddy." Sophie nodded and skipped away, seemingly satisfied now that she was back in her favorite place with her favorite people. Alina faced Marcus, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. "You shouldn't have brought her here." "I know," Marcus said quietly, "but she's been asking about you every day. She doesn't understand why you disappeared from our lives." I explained why. You explained to me. But Sophie only knows that the person who made her feel loved and safe suddenly doesn't. Want to see her anymore? Alina felt the familiar stab of guilt. That's not fair. You put me in an impossible position. I know I did, and I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I've ever been about anything in my life. Marcus stepped closer, and Alina caught the scent of his cologne. Expensive and subtle, in a way that his previous persona never could have afforded. Even his posture was different now. More confident, more commanding. This was the real Marcus Chen, and Alina wasn't sure she knew how to relate to him. "I brought you something," Marcus said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "It's a cashier's check for $50,000. I know you have medical bills for your mother, and I know the diner doesn't pay enough to cover everything." Alina stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "You think you can buy your way out of this?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "I think I can. Help the woman I love take care of her family. The money has nothing to do with us. It's just something I can do to make your life easier." "I don't want your money, Marcus. Don't take it for yourself. Take it for your mother. Take it because you've been carrying a burden that's too heavy for one person, and I have the means to help." Elena felt her resolve wavering. $50,000 would pay off most of her mother's medical debt and give them breathing room they hadn't had in years. But accepting it would mean accepting charity from the man who'd broken her heart. "Why should I trust anything you say?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember the first night we met, when you gave us food and refused to let me pay full price?" Elena nodded. "I asked you why you were being so kind to strangers. Do you remember what you said?" Elena felt her throat tighten. "I said it's what neighbors do for each other." "That's who you are, Elena. You see people who need help, and you help them. You don't ask questions or judge their circumstances. You just act from your heart." Marcus stepped closer, close enough that Elena could see the pain in his eyes. "What I fell in love with, not just your kindness, but your strength. The way you work double shifts to take care of your mother. The way you remember every customer's name and their favorite order. The way you made my daughter feel like she was the most important person in the world, but you still lied to me. Yes, I did. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But Elena, I need you to understand something. I've been rich since I was born. My father built Tech Vision, and I inherited it when he died. I've never known what it's like to worry about money, or to have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Alina remembered from their time together. After my wife died, I became obsessed with the idea that no one would ever love me for who I really was. Everyone wanted something from me. Money, connections, status. I started to believe that's all I was worth. So you pretended to be poor? Pretended to be normal. Wanted to know what it felt like to be valued for my character instead of my bank account. And then I met you. And for the first time in my life, someone saw me as just a man trying to take care of his daughter. Alina felt her anger beginning to crack. But you kept lying, even after we started to care about each other. As I was terrified, Marcus admitted. I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd look at me differently. That you'd start to question whether my feelings were real, or whether I was just another rich man looking for entertainment. And now? Marcus reached for her hands, and after a moment's hesitation, Alina let him take them. Now I know that I'd rather have you angry at the real me than in love with a lie. I'd rather risk losing you by telling the truth than keep you by living in deception. Alina looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of insincerity. What she found instead was raw vulnerability and a love so deep it took her breath away. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be with someone who lives in a completely different world. We'll figure it out together, Marcus said, lifting her hands to his lips. I don't care about the money, Alina. I care about you. I care about the family we could build together. Alina felt herself beginning to cry again, but this time the tears were different. Hope and fear and love all mixed together in a cocktail of emotion that left her dizzy. I was so hurt, she said. I felt like everything we shared was fake. Feelings were real, Marcus said, pulling her closer. Every moment of falling in love with you was real. Every time I watched you with Sophie and imagined what it would be like to wake up next to you every morning, that was real. Alina looked over at Sophie, who was watching them hopefully from the booth. She really missed me? We both did. The house has been like a tomb without you. Alina made a decision that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed Marcus softly, tasting salt from both their tears. Missed you too, both of you. Marcus held her close, his face buried in her hair. I promise, no more lies, no more secrets. Just us figuring out how to love each other honestly. It's going to be complicated, Alina warned. The best things usually are. 6 months later, Alina stood in the kitchen of Marcus's home, watching Sophie paint at the large island while Marcus prepared dinner. The house was beautiful, but not ostentatious, filled with warm wood and comfortable furniture that invited you to stay a while. The transition hadn't been easy. Alina had initially refused to move in with Marcus, insisting they take things slowly and build their relationship on a foundation of honesty. She'd kept working at the diner, despite Marcus's gentle protests, because she needed to maintain her independence and sense of self. They'd had their first real fight when Marcus had tried to pay off her mother's medical bills without asking. Alina had accused him of trying to control her life with his money, and Marcus had accused her of being too proud to accept help. They'd spent a week apart, both miserable, before Elena's mother had intervened. That man loves you, Maria had said, and love sometimes means letting someone help carry your burdens, just like you've been carrying mine all these years. Alina had learned to accept Marcus's help, not as charity, but as love expressed in the way he knew best. In return, Marcus had learned to ask before acting, to include Alina in decisions that affected their growing family. Miss Alina, look, Sophie called out, holding up her latest painting. It's our family. Alina smiled at the artwork, which showed the three of them plus Elena's mother standing in front of a house under a bright sun. Sophie had been attending art classes at the community center. A compromise between Marcus's desire to enroll her in expensive private lessons and Elena's belief that all children deserved access to creative programs. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Should we hang it on the refrigerator with the others? Marcus came up behind Alina, wrapping his arms around her waist and kissing her neck. Actually, I think it deserves a place of honor in the living room. Alina leaned back against him still, amazed by how right this felt. You spoil her. I spoil both of you, Marcus murmured in her ear, and I'm not sorry about it. The doorbell rang, and Sophie jumped up excitedly. Abuela Maria is here. Lena's mother had been initially suspicious of Marcus, protective of her daughter after seeing her heart broken. But Marcus had won her over with his obvious devotion to Alina and his respectful treatment of their family traditions. He'd learned to make Maria's favorite Cuban dishes and had quietly arranged for her to receive the best medical care available. "How are my favorite girls?" Maria asked, hugging Sophie and Alina before turning to Marcus. "And how is my Snila Alina?" Blushed. Marcus had proposed 3 months ago, a simple, heartfelt proposal in the park where they'd had their first date. Alina had said yes, but they'd agreed to wait until their first anniversary to actually get married. "I'm perfect now that my family is all together," Marcus said. Kissing Maria's cheek as they sat down to dinner, Alina reflected on how much her life had changed. She'd finally quit the diner, but not to become a lady of leisure. Instead, she'd started a foundation with Marcus, providing scholarships and support for families dealing with medical crises. It was meaningful work that used both her understanding of financial struggle and Marcus's resources to make a real difference. "Lena," Marcus said suddenly, "I have something to tell you." Lena looked up from her plate, noting the nervous excitement in his voice. "What is it?" "I got a call from the city today. They want to name the new community center after our foundation. The Rodriguez Chen Family Center." Alina felt tears prick her eyes. "Really? Really?" "The mayor said our work with medical support and children's programs has been transformative for the community." Sophie clapped her hands. "We're going to have a building named after us. After the family we've built together," Marcus corrected gently. Later that evening, after Sophie had gone to bed and Maria had returned to her apartment, Lena and Marcus sat on their back patio, looking out over the garden they'd planted together. Alina was curled up in Marcus's lap, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Giving up your old life for all this?" Lena thought about the question seriously. "I don't regret falling in love with you, if that's what you're asking. But I miss parts of my old life. The simplicity, the feeling that I was making it on my own. And now I'm learning that partnership doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding someone who helps you become the best version of who you already are." Marcus tightened his arms around her. "You've made me better too. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions. Working, taking care of Sophie, but not really living. Now you taught me what it means to be truly happy." Lena tilted her head up to look at him. "I love you, Marcus Chun, all of you. The wealthy CEO and the man who pretended to be poor just to find real love. I love you too, Alina Rodriguez, more than I ever thought possible." As they sat together under the stars, Alina thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The pain, the deception, the forgiveness, and ultimately, it's the love that had proven stronger than pride or fear. Sophie had been right in her first drawing. So they were a family now, imperfect but real, built on honesty and strengthened by the challenges they'd overcome together. And Alina knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. With open hearts and the unshakable knowledge that some kinds of love are worth fighting for, the rain began to fall softly. And instead of running inside, they stayed where? They were letting it wash over them like a blessing. It reminded Alina of that first night at the diner, when she'd seen a father and daughter in need and had chosen kindness over caution. Sometimes, she thought the smallest acts of love can change everything. And sometimes, the greatest love stories begin with the simple decision to see the humanity in another person, regardless of their circumstances. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Marcus asked, referring to their engagement party. Alina smiled, thinking of all the people who would be there. Her co-workers from the diner, Marcus's business associates, Sophie's friends, and most importantly, the families they'd helped through their foundation. "I'm ready for all of our tomorrows." Marcus kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And Alina knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The kind of love that grows stronger in the light of truth and the courage to be vulnerable with each other. The rain continued to fall, but they stayed where? They were safe.